right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the TO Show. I'm pumped this week to have another special guest with us here. But guys, don't forget again to like and subscribe to the channel. We're going to continue to bring you guys awesome content every single week. And kind of mixing it up these last 2 weeks. We've been trying to get different sports outside of just football. So that's been pretty cool here. But like I said, if you guys continue to like the different content, feel free to like and subscribe. But let's dive into things, guys. I want to introduce our guest. We have a UAlbany softball player, Morgan Petty, with us today. How are you doing, Morgan?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. So Morgan, we kind of like to start off these things, just kind of get a little bit about background, kind of about yourself and kind of your path to UAlbany. What was just tell us a little bit about your path to UAlbany and, just go in detail.
Yeah. So I'm not from anywhere near here. I'm from Milford, Delaware, about a 6.5, 7-hour drive. I'm the oldest of 3 girls. I have 2 younger sisters. I've been playing softball. It's the only thing I ever played my life. I think I started maybe like 7 years old, and my dad got me into it. I had a hard time finding my niche with what sport I wanted to do. I was not younger. I was not outgoing at all, and they kind of my parents had to push me into trying different things. And he was like, "Why don't you try softball? It's a lot like baseball." And that was one thing that I did watching with my dad. And so I was like, "Okay, I'll try it." So he's kind of the reason why I'm even here, is because he just always was pushing me to just keep trying it. And I did. And I got recruited pretty young. I was in 8th grade, and it was a kind of a weird time for me because at the time I didn't even know that you could play sports in college. I didn't really grow up with a college team like some people have. And my dad was like, "You're really good. You love it. You work hard. Just try it." So I left playing softball in Delaware, and I moved to playing over in Maryland just because there's better competition. So I played over there. And then schools kept popping up. I went to some camps, and I guess the main reason why I came to Albany was it was my freshman year of high school. My coach at the time for travel, he got really sick, and he was like, "I can't coach you guys anymore." And I had a hard time finding a travel team. And that was really big, making sure you're on your travel team and having somewhere to play to continue getting better to go play, college. And I reached out to the schools that were interested in me. And the only school who responded back, for my memory, was UAlbany. And they were like, "Hey, we'll help find you a travel team, not too far from you. They'll bring you in for the remainder of your high school season." And at that point, I was pretty cool with the school. I loved the coaches, but I was still pretty young. This is around 9th, 10th grade. And I was when they helped me out, and it was more than just "I want you here as a player." It was more let me help you outside of that. And on a personal level, that made me pull the plug. So I ended up committing kind of far from home, but that's what I wanted. But I can't complain. I love it.
Yeah. So what was it kind of like growing up in Delaware? I don't know a lot of people from Delaware. What is kind of the culture there and kind of growing up there? And what part of Delaware are you specifically from?
So I'm from Sussex County. So to kind of put it together, Delaware is super small. We only have 3 counties. So it goes Sussex, Kent, Newcastle. That's it. I would tell you everyone in my town knows everyone. Even I'm outside my town, you could go 15 minutes to the beach. We're a big beach state. Yeah. And it goes crazy in the summer. But even in 30 minutes away or right around the corner, you always know someone. And athletics is a big deal, very homey, but not a lot of people come out going Division 1 or even Division 3. But it's definitely a different feel, very slow paced. We don't have any big cities Albany's. With that, Albany was such a big city for me compared to what I'm used to. I've never seen such a big skyscraper or whatever you want to call it building, but super small, super slow paced, cornfields, beach, we'll relax. That's how it is. And I guess, I don't know, sports, I said, are a big thing, but we had one guy, a football player, he goes to Virginia Tech, and that was huge, big time news. No one ever did that. And then I committed, and even people who went whatever division, JUCO, whatever, that was just always such a big deal. And it's just so different coming up here where so many people do it. So a lot smaller, a lot slower.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. It's kind of building a small community. At least everyone kind of gets along and knows each other. But you talked a little about your recruiting process. What is over your kind of experience of other girls and talking to other girls? What is the kind of like the recruiting process for softball? I'm, a lot of people are not familiar. Every sport's kind of different. You're kind of being recruited at like different times, and like they're looking for different things. Well, talk a little bit about like kind of like the recruitment process for like softball.
Yeah, I definitely could say it's even changed since I've gotten here. But I like from what I remember, it was always like, and I'm kind of happy that these like rules were set into place too after a little bit after time after I committed. But like it was getting to the point where like kids were like committing in like middle school or like eighth grade. And it was just like girls were just, I think, so wrapped up in like, oh, I just want to go to school and I want to go somewhere that it didn't really like give them time to like look and, try different schools. So like they ended up making the rule that you can't talk to certain athletes after a certain age. I can't remember what that is, but it's definitely fast paced, and I think it's getting even faster because the sport is growing. I mean, like when I was younger, there were so many options and different opportunities, and I think it's still growing now. And I think coaches are starting to realize what they want more than they have ever before, because I think athletes are now like getting better, and it's a different change of pace. But I don't know. I think for me, it was just like I started playing 18U, which we go from like 10U, 12U, 14, 16, 18U, like the different age brackets that you play with different girls.
Mhm.
And I remember I started playing 18U, which is like the highest, obviously age wise, but then you have like your gold brackets and different like your elites, like kind of like describing what the team was like. And I started playing 18U gold like super young. And that was obviously really demanding, but it definitely pushes you to like you're playing with girls who are like so much older than you, but they bring different things to the table that I think moving forward helped me a lot, because it was like I was still young, but like these girls were older, but they were still like pushing me and like expecting the same that they were expecting of themselves, which I think helped me as an athlete, because I was like, okay, your standards like here, and maybe you're not there yet, but you have like girls who are a lot better than you who are going to push you to get that way. So that's like kind of what I remember during my time of getting recruited and, going through that process. Like I said, I started really young, but I don't regret it. I think it was the best thing that happened to like even not even like committing young, but just like starting that process and playing with girls who were a lot better, stronger, faster, whatever it was. It really pushed me to just step my game up a bit.
So like what's the time frame? You talked a little bit about like coming out of like even like late middle school, early high school. Well, give me like a little bit of a time frame, at least for the viewers as well, of like
Yeah.
when is like the prime time to like get recruited and commit by like as a normal like as normal softball.
I think that's a good question. I think getting recruited and getting looked at and going through that process starting of like end of your freshman year, the beginning of your sophomore, starting that time and just kind of going to these camps and getting your foot out there, I think is important. And I think like the best bet I would always say of like getting recruited and committing by would definitely be like the end of your junior year, beginning of your senior year, because it gives you so much time to just like if things go wrong and like something happens where like a coaching change happens with like your team that you're committed to, and let's say they drop you and they're like, we're not interested, I think it gives you plenty of time to like, okay, let me step back in and like figure that out. But I think ideally like starting your freshman year of high school, maybe even like eighth grade-ish, just like starting to those camps and getting out there.
Mhm.
It can never hurt to go early, but I just think like it's really big on like just getting your name out there and like making like just having people know who you are. And I think if you continue doing that all through like I think freshman sophomore year and committing by the end of your junior senior year, I think is the most ideal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think every sport's like different. So it's like for every sport, there's certain times like especially like different sports that you peak at like in high school or like other things, there's specific things that they're looking at. It's always interesting to talk to different people and what they're doing. So like for example, you were talking about like travel teams and other things like that. You said you've only really played softball growing up. You know, it's unfortunately more and more we've seen only like one sport players, and I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing, but like coaches forcing other like players and students to only play one sport at a certain age. Hey, you need to focus on this or else you're screwed. With softball, it's a really big time commitment. You start in the spring and you pretty much go in until like, depending on where you're at, you could go all the way almost to October, November with things, and that could bleed into other sports. So have you seen like a lot of girls be able to go like to a higher levels and play other sports at the softball level?
I think you could do it, and I think more coaches this is something I'm actually pretty passionate about. I only did just softball because it was the only thing I loved. But I have a
Mhm.
sister who plays 4 sports, and I have teammates who used to play 2 or 3 sports at a time plus softball. And we're fortunate enough that we have coaches that are before we even came here, they're we want you to play different sports and have different hobbies because, like you said, what we do is such a grind and it takes out so much of our time during the year that it's nice to have something to fall back on and just just have an outlet or just something to change up how things are, especially with playing this sport or any sport. It's you always want something that you can just kind of just have fun with and it's not as crazy or as I don't know, demanding. And just you can just play around with it. So I definitely think it's you could do it. It's definitely difficult, but I mean, I have friends from home who've done it at some of their schools and they get done one and then it's right into the other. I know one girl from my hometown, she plays field hockey and lacrosse and she makes it work. And I think in a way, I think more schools should let us and coaches should let us. I think if our team wanted to, that could be something they could try. Like my coach did 2 sports when she came here. So I don't know. I think it's something that definitely should be allowed or considered because, like I said, getting a switch up of not doing the same thing every day and trying something different or doing something different definitely makes, I don't know, makes the process a little more enjoyable. But like I said, I only did it because I didn't do it because I never picked up on something else. I wish
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. Would you, based on your perspective, kind of leading to the next question here, it's summer's like when almost all the coaches are off, and that's like when they're hosting camps or clinics or traveling to other camps or clinics around. Do you think you're able, if you are like passionate about like multiple sports and not saying like you're just focused on one, but want to kind of get to the next level, not necessarily playing two, but you want to keep an open door for, let's say, 2 sports or whatever. Do you think you're able to, during that summertime, able to bounce, like focus on one or another? Or do you think you're able to do two? During that time, it's just like for me, for example, like I kind of unfortunately had to choose like between football and baseball because like do I go play like on a travel team for a summer, but I can't then go to like a bunch of football camps during that time because I'm already committed to other things. How would you best go about if somebody is kind of like in that position, you think, and especially in like a year, looking back on, if you had another sport that you were kind of passionate about?
That's a good question. And I definitely feel like that's a good question. And I definitely feel like at times I think it's just how you could plan around it. And I think too, what coaches you have behind you. I think it really comes down to what coaches you have to support you and are they in support of what you're thinking about doing? And I think, that helps a lot. And on top of it, it's kind of hard for me to answer because I did try to play field hockey at one time and not that I didn't pick up on it, but it was just very difficult to manage, like you said, fall ball, with me, playing fall ball and
Hmm.
during the fall and then having to play a demanding sport like that and keeping up with what that had to offer. I don't know. I definitely think it comes down to what your goals are as a person and what you're kind of looking for at the end of the day. Like if you really want to do 2 sports, I think you can. You just really have to figure out, okay, how am I going to make this work? What's my game plan? Who do I have to support me and what do they have to say? How can they help me? And I guess move forward on that. But I think if I had that idea or that plan, maybe I would have pursued 2, but I definitely think it's hard for me to answer just because I've never experienced playing 2 sports at once. I've never
Hmm.
experienced even playing something other than softball. So I definitely that's it's a difficult question to answer, but I think if you have a plan going in, that could probably help you.
I think it's important to, I think it's important to kind of reach out to the sports community right now and be like, hey, we need to make some of these more camps more available to kids and be able to get recruited at a certain level, especially for multiple sport kids. I think it makes it tough because sometimes when you get in a freshman or sophomore in high school, there's like, hey, you get to pick one or another. And I understand that's a tough decision in there, but I think we need to make it like more open to say, hey, we need to work around these athletes' schedule who are busy, but they also are looking to play possibly multiple sports in colleges. I know I struggled with that, being able, like I said, struggling with baseball and football, having to pick, hey, on the this weekend, do you want to go to a football camp or do you want to go to a baseball camp? So really, and it's really tough too as well because especially I feel like fall ball for the spring sports are really big because that's again another place where coaches it's their off season, so they're looking continuing to travel and look at other these camps and clinics that are bleeding into other fall sports that might be in their full season. So I think it's something that I think I understand you can't have necessarily the best of both worlds, but I think we need to get to a place where we are keeping it more open to other athletes and giving them more of an opportunity to do things. And I don't know if that's something like with the NCAA of like changing like when signing is or other things like that, or things of that nature. But I think that's something that we should probably definitely think about because I think subconsciously we make kids pick one sport or another. And I think as we see, the more successful, and it works for some people who play one sport, but I think you've seen now in the professional sports level or even the highest college level, seen a lot of kids play multiple sports. And I think we need to continue to encourage that. And I think it continues to keep kids busy and keep them out of trouble and continue to, create a positive environment. But Morgan, you kind of talked about like, softball's been your like only love for ever since you were a kid. What kind of made you fall in love with softball as a kid? You said your dad's pushed you to keep trying. What kind of like got you to like click and just be like, hey, this is something I really love?
I think about this myself with my career, talking to like people, like my family and stuff, because they've asked me that question. I don't think there was ever a time that it was like, I love this sport. Like, I don't ever remember a specific moment, but I just remember I love, like, the one thing I loved hitting the ball. Like, I loved hitting, and I had never gotten joy, like, as a little kid of playing a sport until I, like, started learning how to hit a softball
Mhm.
and really working with my dad on that. Like, my dad had an opportunity to play baseball in college, but he ended up going and joining the military instead, and he played a little bit of minor league baseball before he hurt himself. And he was always like he was always a great hitter, and he taught me how to really be a good hitter, and we kind of bonded over that. And I think when I started getting that bond with him, because like not that we didn't before any other sports, but something about this sport I think he was able to relate to easily because it is so similar to baseball in that way. And I just remember like what always would be like, hey dad, let's go have a catch, or hey, let's go out and hit off the tee. Like I just loved that. And then it just kind of kept going. And I tried like a few other sports, like I said, like field hockey and like basketball, but I never got the joy that I got when I played softball. Especially I can remember when I was little just hitting a ball, or like that feeling of like really barreling up on a ball and
Mhm.
getting better at it. It just that kind of high, I guess, kept me going. And just like that bond I had with my dad, that something I didn't want to stop.
Yeah, so you talk a little bit about earlier about like how softball and I think a lot of sports are a grind, but the sports where you're playing, a long season over a longer period of time, those can be a little bit more of a grind over time rather than a short period of time. What are some things that you do kind of like mentally to like, you said you've only played softball, your entire life. What's some things that you do to kind of like, you talked a little bit about like hobbies and other things, but some things that you do can like mentally to like whether it's refocusing or kind of just be like, hey, you're struggling right now, I need like a pick me up, or things that it's a long season, you're going to have downs and ups throughout the season. What are some things that you do to kind of continue to help yourself and stay energized and stay ready, for that next game, next at bat?
I'm a big talker, and I'm really big with my relationship with my teammates, especially my two roommates. Like I room with Miranda and Wendy. They're both on the softball team, and they kind of have helped me a lot with like letting me talk through things that I'm feeling and experiencing, and that's definitely helped me. And then just I keep a journal every day, and I write down just different things about my day and certain goals I have for myself every day. And I tend to sometimes go back to them of like, what was I feeling that day when it came to softball or just myself, and how can I learn from it moving forward? I'm really big on that. And just kind of I'm one that I think a lot, and that's a good thing and a bad thing, especially with the sport. And especially I'm going through those lows with it. I just think back to like, okay, make this as simple as possible. If it's hitting, like just see it and just swing. With feeling a ball, just watch it into your glove. Like I'm huge on like keeping it simple when I'm feeling like I'm not doing my best, because at the end of the day, going back to being simple will translate, and it will just like leave all the rest that's not going well out of my mind. And I do definitely, when the season's over, like when we're home on breaks, I'm one to really go back home and just enjoy my time at home. We live near the beach, so I go to the beach all the time and like just drive up and just enjoy myself there, and just kind of think of like just like slow down, relax, take your moment, whatever you need, and then I don't know, move forward. But I definitely think at times when we have those moments, with it being like, I mean, you're the same way, like we are all going through a grind and it's hard, but kind of just taking those moments of like, take a breath, relax, and just slow it down for a second, because I think we can just tend to get so caught up in to what's going on that we forget that we can also slow it down at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Yeah. So you kind of being talking and talking out. How do you able to kind of like control of like saying like, sometimes you can almost say too much, and how are you able to kind of like gauge that, like, hey, make sure that I'm not saying, too much or saying the wrong thing.
I think I'm still probably learning that a little bit, but I think what I talk about is more or less like how can I fix myself to make sure I'm helping my team out, because
Mhm.
all I think about is like, oh my gosh, what can I do that's beneficial for my team? Even if I'm not starting and I'm not in that lineup, it's just like, what can I do? So when I'm talking to them, sometimes they do have to be like, Morgan, you need to bring yourself back in and just like stop, or we've like it's enough, like just take a breath. But I think I'm still learning that. I don't know if I'll ever be the best that I would like to be, but I'm also really grateful to have two teammates who are good at like saying like, "Hey, snap out of it. What you're thinking is like you're too off the deep end. You need to reel it back in. Take a breath. Know who you are." Like, and we don't all have teammates like that. We don't have friends like
Mhm.
that. But I'm just really grateful that I do, and they kind of help me, you know, get back into reality.
Yeah. So you guys, especially you've had a pretty good like start to the season so far. Again, it's a grind throughout the season. Still got a couple more months left before season's over with and the tournament and all that good stuff. But, what are some, things that you're doing? You've been a pretty good hitter, throughout, but you're kind of really breaking out, this year and, finally like kind of breaking through that ceiling. What are some things that, to any like, young softball players or high school players that, what is kind of contributed to your success?
Just putting in the work. I really try to put in as much work as I can, and also I've just learned a lot. I really have learned it more in college than I have before coming here. It was like just making things super simple. Like you don't have to have this elaborate swing, and you don't have to have this elaborate game plan either of being successful. It's just like finding what works well for you and sticking to that. And some days what works well for you isn't going to work, but you can't break away from that plan, because more times than not it's been successful for you. So like for me, I just try to just keep it to where I'm not going crazy, I'm not doing something stupid. I'm just focusing on my plan, what works best for me. And that's going to take a while. Like I don't think I figured out, like you said, I've really kind of broken my way through this year, and I don't think it took me, I think the reason it took me so long is because it was just trying to figure myself out in college. Like the sport is so different and at this level, and having to just trust myself and trust the process and my coaches and my teammates, and just knowing that it'll all fall into place. You just have to keep going. Like you can't give up. You got to keep going even if some days look better than others, just got to keep going.
Yeah, what you cited, like, it's at this level, it's so different. What makes it so much different at the collegiate level than any other level that you've played at?
It's so much faster. Like not even like the pitches you're seeing or like everything's faster. The game's faster, the pitches you're seeing are faster, the balls hit are harder and faster. Girls are running quicker, throwing harder, and the mental game is just so different than what we've seen. Like, I mean, in travel ball, you're playing to like win like a national title if you're in that specific in that like I guess part of the I don't know, you can whatever. It's like different brackets, like you can win different
Mhm.
brackets of
Different
or
tiers
like
of.
yeah, national titles or something. But for here, it's like in college, you're kind of playing to win like your conference. Like that's like the big thing. And I think when you reach conference play, if it wasn't fast before then playing like people from other teams, it's going to be even faster now because these games matter and everybody wants it. And it's just like who's going to play it one step ahead quicker or one step ahead smarter. So I just think the IQ of the game is also faster because you're pulling out different plays and ideas that you might have not ever known before. And what we're taught before coming here is not necessarily what's going to keep working when you come here. Like coaches all have different styles, and that's another thing, like having to really catch up on how your coach wants you to play and what their play looks like. That's also quicker. So I just think all of it, it's very overwhelming as a freshman, and I can say it was for me, and it was even more so having to catch up after COVID hit because my freshman year got taken. So it was just like it's so fast, but like it makes sense because we're playing at the best level you can, so it's going to be quicker.
So you kind of talked about like the goals to win the America East tournament. That's your guys' kind of first goal every year. You guys had some success, kind of relatively soon, and continued sustained success over the time. What do you think you guys, as a team, do to kind of like create that culture of that winning culture? And how have you kind of seen like that carry over from seniors that have left and that kind of senior continue to pass through that culture?
I think it just bases on like the needs of each team. Like what we needed last year we played really tight and it was like, okay, how can we just take a breath? And what is our like saying to each other that, hey, just take a breath and we're gonna get through it. So like this year was more or less we were playing really loose, but we needed to clean up some things. And I guess it's just like you take away from upperclassmen is just like, hey, like you hear their stories of what they went through. And sometimes what they went through is even harder than what you're going through, or they had a more successful road to their winning their championship than we have. But like hearing the different stories and like how they prepared definitely helps prepare us. Knowing that if things aren't going our way, they're going to go our way because we're going to figure it out. But I definitely think it's based off of what each team each year needs. And I also think it just sometimes things click at random times of the year. Like I'll give you an example. Last year, we were kind of bouncing around of like teetering on good play and just making silly mistakes. And it didn't all fall together until I would say maybe halfway through conference. It all just fell into place. And I don't know why it does or how it does, but it just does. So I'm hoping that we're gonna, not have that this year and just keep, moving forward and having that little flip, like that switch, that light bulb go off soon. And I think it is, but I think it all just depends on your team and when your team just makes that switch. And I don't know. I wish I knew why and how it happened when it does, but it just does.
Yeah, it's almost like kind of like magic, or just like a almost like a collective momentum, or collective. It's almost like a collective, like couple plays here and there, and then you kind of start snowballing into, positive vibes and continual confidence through the whole team. And it can just start with like one player or one hit or one play or a
Yep.
couple plays. It's kind of like crazy like that. It's almost like that for kind of for all sports. Pre-air here, you talked a little about your minor in journalism, but talk a little bit about kind of like the academic side and what it's kind of like you're starting to kind of figure out kind of what you want to do. We understand that sports don't last forever, but what are some goals that you have, kind of on the academic side, kind of after college, or have you been looking into careers and stuff like that? I know that was a loaded question there.
Yeah, no, you're good. Coming in, I've always struggled figuring out what I wanted to do as a like a career all through my life. Like I know some people just know exactly what they want, they come in and for me, I came in majoring in biology, which I really shouldn't have because I never did well in it. But I was so determined to be a dermatologist my freshman year. And I wish I could go back because it didn't really do well for me my freshman year. I struggled a lot academically, and it didn't all click for me until I would say last spring, last season, I switched my major from I studied bio to business to communications, and I wish I had figured it out sooner because I my one big thing I think I would tell anybody is that come in wanting to learn more about something you're good at. And for me, like for a career, like I'm really great at talking to people and I love putting myself out there and having conversations. And so I was like, okay, maybe I'll try that as my major. So I'm a communications major, I'm a double minor in business and journalism. And I did journalism because I like to write. But I think I'm still trying to figure out I am going to be taking my 5th year, so I have a little bit more time to figure out what I want to do career wise. But I think I want to stay in sports and definitely work in some type of career in sports. I'm able to talk to people. I love how like Craig, our one AD here, he talks to alumni, and it's definitely been something that I've been really interested in. And so that's one thing that's been up my alley. But I've also dabbled in a little bit in like journalism and sports writing, and that has been something very interesting to me. But I think I'm still trying to figure it out, take it day by day. But definitely I would say for anybody, like just come in looking at something that you're good at because I think it and that you like. Because at the end of the day, like you can major in something that you want to like, but if you don't like it, you're gonna have a really, really hard time at sticking to going to class and like doing the work. And that's like a big thing that I think I wish I knew before I came in as a freshman.
Yeah, I think the my advice to anybody coming in would be just stay kind of having like an open mind to wherever it takes you. You might like want to be so and so, but you might not. You might think that you're better than it at it than you actually are. And I would just say just try different things. Like there's a bunch of different classes to take, and I understand it can get like frustrating. You're taking stuff that for people that know exactly what they want to do, and they're like, why do I have to take these classes? And I understand that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But if you don't know what you want to do, take the vast variety, as many different classes that you can, just so you can be like, hey, that's interesting. That's kind of cool, or different things like that. So at least it can get the ball rolling and you can at least give yourself a direction and where you want to go. And again, even like in the career world, and I would say this to anybody, it's not necessarily, you don't need to say, oh, here's my career field and I'm going to stick to it. You're more likely 3 to 5 times within your first 10 years to like change your career fields and other things like
Yeah.
that. So I think it's like it's you don't really know it until you like get into that position. So for anybody who's out there, that's a positive side of like, hey, if you don't know what you want to do, there's plenty of people just like you that have no idea either, and you really don't know. I mean, my best and next advice would be like, hey, if you're able to do like some summer intern work or other things like that, where you're working in different environments, you can kind of see, hey, I kind of like that environment, or I kind of like don't like that environment. Oh, hey, I really like working like this, or I like working with people, or other things like that. Try it out. You really don't know until you get into that business setting. Like it might look good on the piece of paper, but then when you start diving into things, it could be complete opposite of like, oh shoot, this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
So I think an internship is another thing to help you cross off like different things. So understand as an athlete, like we don't have as much time as other people, but if you ever get an opportunity to even do like just little internships here or there, out of your off season, or even like when you have time off, whether it's summer or the winter, that might not be a bad idea for anybody out there, not just athletes that are listening in. I think that's something important to be able to think. So what kind of like, you talked a little bit about like talking with people, and you're like a big talker, you like to put yourself out there. Why do you think is that just kind of like your personality, or do you think that there's like something like that shaped you, or if you've always just been kind of like comfortable with yourself?
I definitely think it's something I learned. I grew up when I was little, I was very shy. I always kind of hid behind my parents, but both my parents are very like, they're talkers. Like my mom and my dad, they own their own business. And then my dad used to work in aviation, and he was a manager at the time. So he like knew how to talk to people. And my parents just always were like, they taught me how to have a voice and to use it. And I think when I was going through like getting older and the recruiting process and going from different travel teams and having to introduce myself different times to just different people, I think that helped. But then I just feel like, I don't know, I always am just one to say like, we'll have a dinner in the hallway here at school and I'll just say, hey, how are you? Or just walking by someone, just saying hello. I don't really know where it stemmed from. It's just kind of who I am and my character. I don't know. I love to just talk to people. And I think that also I learned that from journalism too, because we have to interview people. And I've just learned how to just talk, and you end up finding some of the coolest stories in people when you just put yourself out there and just say hello. So I think it stemmed from just learning and picking it up over the years and just I'm just super interested in other people, and I just want to know more about them.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think that's anybody out there is like, I think it's important to figure out who you are and kind of like know yourself. And I always say, like I said, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I understand you might feel vulnerable, but once you do it once, I think just go for it, go do it. I think you'll feel like, oh my gosh, this is not that bad or whatever. I think what the first time you're able to do it instead of being
Mhm.
so shy and reserved. And I think that's just important. And I think that comes with maturity and a growing process of, hey, I want to be able to just be comfortable with myself and know your body, know kind of like, hey, I'm just gonna be me, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna be okay with being me and not trying to be somebody else. So I think that's important. And I think through college we continue to learn, and even after college we still continue to learn ourselves, and we really don't really know ourselves until I think we've kind of like gone through it all. And
Yeah,
so
like you have to
it's
tell.
just
Like,
an
I
interesting.
think you have to test your boundaries, and I definitely think too, with like how you said, learning how to put yourself out there. You never know what's going to come out of it. And I remember like we had this one assignment for my class last year for my one journalism class of like find a professor or like a high official on campus and just go talk, interview them. And if it weren't for me being comfortable with myself to go and just talk to anyone, I don't think I would have gotten through that assignment. And that sounds so silly, but like it makes you feel uncomfortable, but I think you grow from that. And like I end up ironically, I was walking in the parking lot and I found Mark Benson, and I just walked right up to him and I was like, "Hey, can I just talk to you real quick?" And don't get me wrong, I was so nervous, but like when you feel that feeling so many times, it really makes you grow and to be uncomfortable with or to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's not only effective on like one aspect of life, that just helps you throughout your life. So I think it's so big to just feel those feelings and to put yourself through that.
I think that's awesome. Yeah, I think it's important to, and it's a good networking skill and able to kind of continue to meet people and get to know people, and know their stories. Just because I think that it's really cool to, somebody like you being able to come on the show and kind of get to know about you and know your story, and kind of let the world know like, hey, here's me, here's what I'm about, and continue to talk about it and grow and learn from it. But Morgan, before we wrap things up here, do you have anything to say? Any shout outs to anybody or anything you want to say to the viewers before we wrap things up?
Um, all I gotta say is my big thing is just no matter who you are, what you're going through, just be yourself. I really learned that going through college of like I never let myself be myself until I got here because it's just a new slate, clean slate. And I just say to anybody, just just be yourself and don't change for anybody else. And what is meant for you will come to you. I've definitely like learned that and I believe in that wholeheartedly. So also just like shout out to my family. They are really big supporters and I definitely would not be where I am without them. So I literally say like they're they're why I am who I am and where I'm at today. So I wouldn't be able to do it without them.
Awesome. That's awesome stuff. Big shout out to Morgan's family, Morgan's parents. So guys, before we wrap things up, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe and go check out, how the softball team and Morgan, we're going to continue to follow Morgan this season. She's going to continue to, hit some bombs and driving some runs and, we hopefully get the Great Danes on the right path to, little America East champs this year and hopefully get a good bid in the tournament and hopefully only time will tell. So we're excited to watch you and follow you guys along this season. Morgan,
thank you. Go Danes.
Awesome. All right guys, well until next week, we'll see you. Peace.